Hi everybody, David Nour. I want to welcome you to another live session. I tend to do these typically every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And I pick a topic I'm passionate about. I pick a topic that hopefully I have some expertise or background or experience in. And the idea is to really give you 15 to 20 minutes of practical, pragmatic sound bites to put to practice. I'm a big believer that if you get useful information that you can apply to what you're doing on a regular basis, on a daily basis, it hopefully helps modify that behavior. So delighted you're here. I also will post this on a couple of different social channels afterwards. And welcome your feedback, welcome your comments, your examples, best practices you've come up with. So we're in the middle of a series called 10 Relationship Impact Moments. Over the last 2 decades, I've been a student of business relationships. And I often observe what incredible individuals, teams and organizations do phenomenally well. More importantly, when it comes to business relationships, do very consistently in how they engage, how they interact, how they influence others to get things done. And over the years, I've captured these 10 moments. So Larry Bonet, glad you're here. Welcome. So I've captured these 10 relationship impact moments. I'll just mention all 10, and in each session, we'll do a deep dive in each individual one. So here we go, 10 relationship impact moments. Number 1 is empathy. Walk in their shoes. We often come to meetings, we come to conference calls, we come to interactions with our own personal agenda. If you can subside that just for a minute and really understand where others are coming from, I think it will give you a broader perspective. It will help you better understand how to appeal to their logical self-interest, right? So especially if you get headwind, really understanding where they're coming from and appealing to that which they care about is going to really pave the way for you to make that relationship that much more productive, that much more useful. Number 2, engagement. You got to show up. You got to show up on a consistent basis. You got to show up with your best. You got to show up. And way too many people, I think, go through their relationships in a more passive manner versus what can I do to help? How can I be an asset? What problems are you trying to solve? I may not even have the answer, but I may know somebody that has the answer. Let me put the two of you together. So you got to show up. And really, engagement is all about proactiveness and really clarity of that intent to show up and make a difference. Number 3, which we're going to cover today, is adaptability. You got to tailor it. In this day and age, one size does not fit all. And way too many people, again, go through their relationship interactions more like a robot or more like they've got a straitjacket on versus how can and we all have constraints. There's things we can and cannot do. I understand that. But how can we, within those constraints, make the most of this relationship, of this interaction? 4, perspective. Change their lens. I keep bringing up Robin Williams in the movie Dead Poets Society, where he asked the students to get up on their desks to see their class from a different lens. We don't do enough of that. We don't see that same scenario from different lenses. By the way, I'm reminded that we all come to that scenario from very different walks of life, very different experiences, very different past lessons. So one of the things I like to do in my relationships is really change their perspective, change their lens. 5, conviction. Bring a point of view. If I got on these videos and I talked about, hi, my name is David, and I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about relationships, I'm not sure anybody would ever come back. Yet how often do we see that in our day-to-day interactions? You got to bring energy. You got to bring excitement. You got to bring conviction. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are you passionate about? What will you and won't you do is going to be critical to people that want to interact with you. Number 6, collaboration. Make it stronger together. I've always said collaboration for sake of collaboration is a waste of time. That's why I've never understood why we need a meeting for a meeting that's coming up, right? It's just a complete waste of time. Conversely, collaboration to make the end result stronger is priceless. So collaboration is critical to those particularly long-term strategic relationships. Number 7, selflessness. I often talk about if you reduce your self-interest, it's amazing what others will share. Bill Brown, glad you're here. Welcome. Calvin, glad you guys have joined. So if you reduce your self-interest, How can others confide in you? How can they share more with you? How can you make it comfortable for them to say, here's what I'm struggling with. Here's what my priorities are. Here's what my constraints are. So the relationship is going to get that much stronger if you reduce your self-interest. We're talking about the 10 relationship impact moments. Empathy, number 1. 2, engagement. 3, adaptability. We'll talk more about that today. 4, perspective. 5, conviction. 6, collaboration. 7, selflessness. Reduce your self-interest. 8 is accountability. You got to own it. I have 0 relationships that care for finger pointing. Well, that didn't happen because so-and-so didn't ship or do. They don't care. They don't want to know the backstory. All they want to hear is, I apologize, right? And here's how we're going to fix it. And I think most people are that way. So accountability is all about you got to own it. Even if it wasn't your mistake, even if you didn't screw up, take the high road. I apologize. I screwed up. We screwed up. Here's how we're going to fix it. That's how relationships move forward. By the way, in many cases, that's how relationships become dramatically stronger. I've said it and I tell my kids, if you don't make a mistake, you're not human. It's what you choose to do about that mistake afterwards that really sets you apart. Number 9, candor. Say what others can't. Say what others won't. I just wrote in Tuesday tips that I send out via our private community that the movie Jerry Maguire was on last night. And I've seen the movie several times, and I watched it last night with my daughter, and we're talking about fewer, more meaningful relationships, fewer, more real, more impactful relationships. And if you remember the movie, the relationship with him and that wide receiver client of his got real. And they got raw, and he talked about you got to remove that chip off your shoulder, right? And the wide receiver is giving him feedback, personal or professional. So I think the idea of candor can also strengthen relationships, appropriate, and with people who are open to that. Last but not least, 10 is improvement, up their game. I often ask people, how are others better off because they're in a relationship with you? And most people jump into, well, let me tell you how great I am, and let me tell you all that I do. And I said, hold on a second. That's not what I asked. What I'm asking you is, how are others better off because they're in a relationship with you? If you can't answer that, you got some work to do. So this week's session is focused on adaptability. There's a great Chinese proverb that says, the wise adapt themselves to circumstances just like water molds itself to the pitcher. Think about it. Water doesn't have any kind of a shape. It takes the shape of whatever it is in. And unfortunately, a lot of people have become too stringent, too restricted, too guided by policies or procedures, or that's just kind of how we do things. And when you show up with your relationships in that kind of a box, right, it doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity. It doesn't leave a lot of room for really coming up with solutions to consistently more challenging obstacles we all face. So I looked up, again, most of you know my story. I came to this country, didn't know anybody, didn't speak a word of English. So I often look things up. And I looked up definition of adaptability, and it says, changes behavioral styles or method of approach when necessary to achieve a goal. Adjust style as appropriate to the needs of the situation, responds to change with a positive attitude, not, oh, I don't want to do this, right? With a positive kind of forward-thinking attitude and a willingness to learn new ways to accomplish work activities and objectives. Think about it. Would other people call you adaptable? Do you think you're adaptable? Are you in an environment to be more adaptable? That's the kind of introspection that I think most of us can greatly benefit from. So, and again, in just observing key leaders that I've seen, key contributors, whether it's a sales rep or a channel sales rep or a project manager, those who build great relationships to get things done, one of the things I've noticed about the successful ones and unsuccessful ones is this ability, this willingness to adapt. So I did some homework on where does it come from, and it was interesting. I talked about a couple articles I found, talked about the best way I can describe it is, I think, dumb mistakes we all make from these, for lack of a better word, mental scripts of what and how we're supposed to behave in certain scenarios. Now, in one sense, those mental models or behavioral models or mental scripts, whatever you want to call them, those constructs are really useful because they make us efficient, and we go through the day with little to no effort. Think about tying your shoes. Think about sending an email. Most of us don't have to think about that. It just becomes second nature, right? Unfortunately, relationships have a lot of variables to them. Number one, relationships are between individuals, not logos. I've said this before. Your building doesn't have a relationship with another building, or your company logo doesn't have a relationship with another logo. It's you and Beth, or you and Sam, or Steve. It's between individuals, number one. And those individuals come from very different walks of life. This morning, I had a great cup of coffee with a young woman who's just got a great background. And it was just, that's where I started, because I want to understand where she's coming from to this scenario. And we all come at these interactions from very different walks of life. So the efficiency, the effectiveness of those models are great, again, because they help us go through the day without much effort, but they don't really work well in these scenarios. So the two downsides to those models, to having a script for everything, is number one, they push us to disregard the reality of what's happening. Have you ever seen a sales professional or sales rep walk into a scenario and just sound scripted? Forget a sales rep for a second. Have you seen an executive get on stage and sound scripted? It sounds like it doesn't matter what's happening around them. They're just going to, do their thing. Now, that may work for a comedian, but even comedians learn improv, and they learn how to adapt to that scenario. The second downside of having a script or a model or a straitjacket for those interactions is you become very stubborn in doing what needs to be done differently the exact same way. You, in essence, become a defender of status quo, not one that challenges it. So nothing against processes. Don't misconstrue my comment. Nothing against rules or guidelines. But when it comes to relationships, those who, and again, layman's term for this is somebody's quick on their feet or they adapt really well. Well, you have to be a student of your surroundings. Years ago, I worked for IBM. And one of the things IBM taught us was mirroring. Mirroring technique says really observe your counterpart and mirror their pace, mirror their style, mirror their preference, right? So I speak fast, I think fast, I move fast. And if I'm interacting with someone who maybe is in a slower pace, that could come across as slick or agenda or, whoa, sorry about New York, but New Yorkers, right? The guys from Brooklyn, right? Converse, so I've learned to slow down and be more intentional with my thoughts, with my speech, with my action. Now, I'm a big believer of don't try to be somebody you're not, because everybody has a BS radar. But if you adapt to that scenario where you're not matching their style, their approach, it helps them feel a little more comfortable, a little less uptight, right? So on that note, I want to give you some tips. I want to make sure these are practical, pragmatic ideas that you can put to use the same day. So number one, keep some sort of a notebook or journal. For again, those who know me know that I carry around these blue notebooks, and I've had one for years, and these 300 pages typically last me a year, and every meeting, every conversation, every conference call I capture in here. And one of the things I'm a big believer of is prepping for a call or a meeting with just a few minutes, 15 minutes in the parking lot in advance, 15 minutes before a call. What are the key things I'm trying to accomplish? What am I likely to be asked? What are they going to ask of me? What do I want to know? What's the next step? Just way too many of us, I think, try to wing it. So capturing that, and afterwards, 5 minutes afterwards, what went well? What didn't go well? They said this and I stumbled, or they said this and my response didn't sound good to me, much less to them. So capturing those before, during, and after, I think is a great learning opportunity. I've also recently bought an iPad Pro, and I'm trying to do it electronically, but call me old school. There's still value in keeping that journal. Number two, you want to distinguish between observations and inference, because facts, right? And I often tell people, somebody says, well, so-and-so said that. I'm like, well, how do you know, right? Or I've heard. I'm always nervous about, when it comes to relationships, secondhand information. So I always ask people, look for observable behavior. Clarify before you respond. Oh, so, Jane, let me make sure I understand. Is this what you're asking? Or tell me where we're going with this. Or tell me what you're after. Because I don't want any of that to be vague and I start to respond to something that's not what they asked. I call it, digging for gold 50 feet over here when it's really 5 feet over here. So really distinguish between those. Rules and policies. Do you always insist on going by the book? Right? So I've never understood, some of the rules or policies some people have to, or they feel like they always have to follow. Again, it doesn't leave a lot of room for creativity. Listen, I understand, our working parameters are here. Within this, what can we do together? How can we solve that issue? Understanding what your comfort zone is and looking for opportunities to push yourself outside of that comfort zone. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. The other thing I wrote was status quo. If you've been in the same job or you've been doing the same thing for an extended period of time, it's very easy to become complacent. And that's the kiss of death, because when you become complacent, you're no longer relevant to your relationships. And that's what they need to see from you. Call it reinvention, call it creativity, call it innovation, call it whatever you want. But we all have to learn and grow. That's why I clean my contacts end of the year and I export them to an Excel spreadsheet and I start fresh in my smartphone. That's why I try to constantly keep up with primary and secondary contact info for people. That's why when I travel, I reach out to them. Hey, I'm coming to town, haven't seen you in a while. It would be great to visit over a cup of coffee. So that adaptability constantly helps you learn and grow from your surrounding, what's happening. So that's today's session. Again, it's focused on adaptability. When it comes to solution, when it comes to value add, when it comes to interactions with your relationships, you also always want to tailor it. So I'm coaching a lot of people. Less presentations, more conversations. Stop going to meetings with a pitch book. Stop going to meetings with, here's the PowerPoint on how great we are. Why don't we start with a dialogue? Why don't we start to understand, hey, tell me where you're coming from. Tell me why I'm here. Tell me, how are you solving this? Is this a priority? So I've always said, convey your credibility through the questions you ask, not the solutions you provide. Because that's how you can really understand where they're coming from. And you can ascertain, is this something I can add value to? I can adapt it, I can tailor it for them? Or candidly, this isn't my cup of tea. By the way, if you tell somebody this isn't my cup of tea, I've often seen that relationship go to a different level because they develop respect for you and you're being candid and you know who you are and what you're not. So hopefully that's useful to you. Again, my name is David Nour. I would highly encourage, if you haven't had a chance, check out our blog, which is just nourgroup.com/blog. I post articles up there. I post articles on LinkedIn and Medium and HuffPost and a handful of other places. And I'm trying to do these every Tuesday at hopefully 1 o'clock Eastern, unless I'm on a flight somewhere or otherwise I can't. So thanks for coming. I hope this has been useful to you. As always, I welcome your comments and your feedback. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Make it a great week. Bye-bye.